Hardik, how do we ensure that AI is solving a real problem and it's not just a gimmick, it's not just the buzz? And perhaps I want to get specific here because I like examples. So can you expand on a real problem that proximity work has solved within this industry, within sports and entertainment?
I think everyone needs to start internalizing first and breaking down everything by first principles. Write down like from the moment your first customer touch point begins to the end and how you retain them. In sports particularly, we've been working with one of our oldest customers. They are one of the biggest leagues in the world. And after every aim night, the marketing and content team would essentially burn the midnight oil. They would watch the entire game clip for 4 hours. They would timestamp it, they would clip highlights, and they would create short form content that they would publish on 12 platforms. And it would take them 6 hours every single time. Anyone else been there creating short form content using long form and like taking too long? So everything begins with you watching the entire clip, right? And that's one of the biggest opportunity areas that we saw. So we built our product, which is called MetaVision. It's an AI layer that essentially watches the match on your behalf, puts together the key moments of what has happened in the match, and clips highlights, syncs commentary, adds captions, and creates social-ready content in just under 15 minutes. So the time to publish went from 6 hours down to 15 minutes. And you compound this every single week, year over year, and you can create 5x more content. And if you want to be relevant today in sports, most of the under 25 audience doesn't consume live sports on TV or on streaming, but they still consume highlights. They still follow all the athletes, and they're spending all of their time on TikTok, on Instagram. So you have to create a lot of short form content, and that's a human limitation because you'll need an army of folks actually creating and editing that level of content if AI cannot help you put that together.
We talked about there's numerous AI tools, right? Let's also be clear, right? When I asked who's using ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Copilot and Perplexity and all these great tools, those are just the mainstream kind of buzz generative AI tools, right? Like WolfCycle has an AI tool, right? So, but I guess the question is, how do you match a tool to a team's capabilities, right? In other words, is the solution just getting everybody a license to X product and saying, we've checked the box, we're going to be successful?
I'd reframe it. I would start with the problem first. What are the key problems that your business solves for your customers today? What's your accuracy rate there? What's stopping you from doing more today? And again, I think I go back to reasoning with first principles, breaking down the entire company as if you would look like a factory line. How would you see like a manufacturing pipeline, and you would see like each section being responsible for certain things, and you would identify blockers at each of those sections and the time that it takes for each of those sections to make sure that it moved on to the next part in the conveyor belt, right? And you would start with the problems, you would identify the bottlenecks, and then you would identify the tools that can help you with those bottlenecks. Now, the ideal way for you would be to upskill your teams in those tools or get some training for your team in those tools, and I would get licenses for those. But if your team is not willing to adapt to them, that's a different challenge that most people face today. Because with AI, it's more, as much as it's about upskilling, it's also about behavior change in organizations. And that's one of the most difficult things to do, especially if you're a big company and you've been around for a while.
Change management, right? It's when people say, well, the technology, the technology works, right? These companies have been around, they're $1 billion valuation, they're big companies. The technology works. It's the change management.